We good to go?
Yep.
Okay. So I will call this area Board of Zoning Appeals meeting to order. It is Tuesday, July 22nd, and it is 6:02. Can I get a roll call, members, please?
Andy Bailey is absent. Grant Mueller.
Here.
Stacy Pedigo.
Here.
Scott Hessensberger.
Here.
Chester Backus.
Here.
Staff members Liz Stitzel and Kat Bell, as well as Attorney Jay Moore, are also present.
Okay. Do you guys get a chance to look at the old minutes? Anything you'd like to add, or can I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve them as presented.
Second.
All right, we'll do all of those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
So that passes. So our next one is old business. Does not look like there is any old business.
No old business.
Okay. We'll move to the public hearings for the evening. Our first one is application CC-2025-00557, docket number 16-25-SE. Can you take us through that, please?
I can. So this is the petition of Superior Capital Investments. This is a request for a special exception for a contractor's business, which is use 9.36 in the A1 agricultural zoning district. The property is zoned agriculturally, as is everything around it. The proposed petition site consists of a 2.7 acre lot on the north side of 700 North between State Road 39 and 500 West in Section 36 of Ross Township. And I will note, this next sentence kind of says it, but this lot will be, is proposed to be split off a 53.756 acre parent tract that it's currently part of. So therefore, when we noticed this hearing, we had to provide notice on the parent tract of the 53. I know we did get some feedback from somebody who believed that the business was going to be the entire 53 acres, and that's not the case. But anytime somebody's doing something, the advertisement goes after the whole parcel at the time of request, not what it will be, even though the approval will be tied with what's proposed. So at any rate, the petitioner is wanting to build a new pole barn type structure on that 2.7 acres up by the road that will be solely for the use of a contracting business for building new homes. The site is currently part of farm ground with some other dwellings in the facility or in the vicinity. And then the site does happen to sit less than 1/10 of a mile west from another property which has a similar special exception, but in that case for a commercial greenhouse and a legal non-conforming woodworking business, which we've allowed to expand. Both of those were constructed and are operating, so we do have some other kind of agriculturally compatible businesses right in this run of residences and farm ground. Everything here is zoned agriculturally. The new pole barn type structure would be for storing equipment for the home building contractor's business, as well as some office space for staff. In order to have that in the A1 district, a special exception approval is required. Contractors are a use that may or may not be appropriate in a given situation, depending on the type of contractor and the location. We group everything together from landscaping contractors that store large piles of mulch outdoors, all the way on through to somebody who's a pool contractor that just has some pool chemicals and runs in and out from their shop. So we look at them case by case. Since there'll be an office and employees entering and exiting, the state will have to give approval in the permitting process through a state design release, similarly to what like the woodworking business had to do. And actually, I think the greenhouse might have been also looked at by the state and ultimately exempted. Since the proposed location will be split from the parent tract and will be less than 20 acres, if the application is approved for the proposed use, then this will still have to go to the Plan Commission for a one-lot minor subdivision to divide that 2.7 acres off before any permitting will be issued to allow the construction of anything. The Health Department has received soil tests, and the new lot is suitable for septic. Because it will be a commercial septic, they have to wait on the Indiana State Department of Health to prepare min specs. There's a map on the second page that kind of shows this really irregularly shaped 50-some acre parent tract, but there's an arrow there that shows you the proposed site for the contractor's business will actually sit up along 700 North, right on the road frontage, and will be up against the other development, not out in the field back behind. And then there's a picture there from the road that kind of shows that field. And on the third page, you can kind of see in a hatched area, quite to scale, but a rough representation of where that 2.7 acres would be. So when we look at a special exception approval, there's a series of standards that need to be examined and found to be met in order to grant a special exception. So the first one is the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. So this is a contractor's business. It's in with personal, professional, and repair services in the zoning ordinance and does require a special exception. There's not any additional development standards specific to a contractor, but he is subject to the general standards of the ordinance, such as having to have buffer yards installed, lighting, signage. That would be compliant lighting. We have a night sky ordinance. Compliant signage. The exterior grounds have to be kept clean and free of junk and debris. Anything with the business can't be stored in the open. It has to be in the structure or fully screened, so it's not visible from roadways or neighboring properties. And then, as noted before, if the application's approved, then this does have to go through the minor subdivision process as well before it will be buildable to place a business on. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other property or persons and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So we were contacted as the petitioner was in the process of purchasing the acreage about whether or not they could build a structure for storing equipment and some office space. Currently, this business does operate, but it has 2 different locations, and the petitioner would like to consolidate those 2 locations into one central spot. They do understand they need to follow local permitting, including septic and state design releases, and have not indicated that that will be a problem. Approval of the request does not appear to create an injurious condition. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped, so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties does not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So again, this will be a pole barn type structure. Signage is limited to what's allowed in the ordinance, but it would still need to be agricultural in appearance. There's already a cabinet shop and a commercial greenhouse in the immediate vicinity, and it's going to kind of be similar in look to what those have. So this is already a little bit of a mixed-use area. Doesn't appear that it would affect adjacent property values beyond what's already there. D, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment of the neighborhood. So kind of hitting on this again, but again, this everything has to be stored inside. This type of business, building houses, materials don't get delivered to the contractor's location. They get delivered to the job sites where the homes are being built. So this is not anticipated to have a significant amount of outdoor storage. And should remain consistent with the rural neighborhood, given a pole barn style. And then it's the next hearing, not this one, but he's wanting a variance on part of his buffer yard, but he's actually wanting to put in substantially more planting. So this, if it goes in as he hopes, will have 100% evergreen screening around the outside of it that will further soften its appearance. And E, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. The drive will come off 700 North and serve the proposed new lot of a little over 2 acres. There's plenty of room for the adequate parking and a turnaround within the petition site, so no hazards would appear to be created on the access road. 700 North is already a heavily traveled road, so having a business that operates Monday through Friday in normal business hours, similar to the cabinet shop and the greenhouse, would not appear to create substantially more traffic than what already exists in that area. A home builder's location is not something where you're going to have a bunch of people coming into a storefront, like say a business that's a greenhouse might. It's more where the employees are going to come in, they're going to park, they're going to head out for the day, and then come back, and then a client might come and meet to look at designs or something here and there. Finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So land use objective 3 of the comprehensive plan says to prevent incompatible land uses from located in agricultural areas which may encroach on confined feeding and farming operations. This proposed business, though not agriculturally based, does exhibit some similarities. The location the business is proposed to be placed in would not appear to create a problem for future agricultural practices. There's already houses there that prohibit confined feedings or grain handlings within respectively a quarter mile or 660 foot, so you're not increasing those circles with the business. Furthermore, land use goal 4, objective 5 states to encourage businesses that are compatible with agriculturally zoned land, and this business would appear to be less intense than agricultural practices around it, since it will typically operate Monday through Friday during normal business hours. These goals would appear to be met. Consequently, staff would recommend to approve the special exception request with the conditions that there'll be no accumulation of junk and debris on exterior grounds. And I would note, we have no reason to think that this person would be an issue. Since we have an audience, we encourage this condition on pretty much every single approval that involves a contractor's business throughout the county, as well as anything involving automobiles, because we know there's always some chance, and we just want to be extra clear, even though the ordinance already says it, that the expectation is a neat site. Storage and equipment and materials will be screened or inside. And then, of course, again, restating that the minor subdivision approval is required before they can move forward. I will note, I think it's in there, we did receive an emailed objection. I'm looking for it. I think it was sent on to board members. Did you receive that? Did you read it in its entirety? So the only thing, I don't see it here immediately to be able to, here, I'll hand it to you. But I did want to note that I think the objector believed the entirety of the 50-some acres was being built into some sort of business complex. And that is not at all the case. We didn't have, two-way conversation there. I think Kat did have some conversations with somebody related to the person who filed the objection. Was that correct? You thought maybe there was some confusion about which site it was actually on. But I wanted to clarify for the board, and I guess for the audience, that this is not a 50-acre business development. This is, if approved, would only be that 2.7 acres up at the front, which would then have to be subdivided off. And you're gonna have a site that honestly looks very similar to like what the greenhouse is down the way, where it's kind of up there by the road frontage. The rest would continue to be farmed and is not part of the approval. A special exception approval is bound to the plan that they submit, so they can't somehow slide that into being something bigger without going through the proper zoning approval. So other than that, I think that was just sort of a general letter of objection of not wanting to see 50 acres get moved from farming to a giant contractor's business that was that large, so.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. Is the petitioner here present? Is there anybody?
Yeah, I thought he's the president.
Sorry, present, no.
Not the president.
Would you like to add anything, sir?
I don't think so.
Okay.
It clears everything up. We operate an extremely organized business.
Would you mind just going and stating that for the mics? We have people that, it's nothing that's supposed to be high pressure, it's just
No,
people watch on YouTube and they can't.
I mean,
The
we
mic-
operate.
Right over there.
Oh, that mic.
And just state your name and who you're with, please.
Stephen Thompson, and I am the owner of Superior Home Services, also the owner of Superior Capital Investments LLC. We operate a very clean, organized business. I mean, if you drive by any of our job sites, you can tell that. If you drive by our current shop, you can tell that. No, I don't really have anything else to add.
Okay. Nope, appreciate that. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to add anything? Okay. Open it up for board discussion. I don't personally see anything that jumps out to me that would be an issue or anything.
It seems to fit, meets all the requirements.
Yeah.
And then the variance, he's asking for more to
Mm-hmm.
happen than less, so. Would you like to have a motion?
Yes, if you don't mind.
All right. So I'd like to make a motion to approve application number CC-2025-00557, docket number 16-25-SE, according to the findings of the staff report, which were incorporated in the motion by reference with the conditions also noted on the staff report.
I'll second. Chester moved and Grant seconded. Roll call vote when you get a chance, please.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hutchinsberger,
Yes.
and Chester Bankus.
Yes.
4-0. I already gave you that.
All right, well, we will move on to our next hearing, which is application CC-2025-00570, docket number 18-25-VA. Can you please take us through that?
can. So this is, I'm gonna save us a little time. This is the same applicant, same location. But in this case, it's a request for a variance to waive the required fence and shrubs on the 15-foot wide landscape buffer in exchange for more evergreens. And I'll kind of save the site description because I think we all understand where this is. But in this particular case, there's kind of he's trying to keep this as small of a site as possible. And so he wants to go with the 15-foot wide buffer yard instead of the wider 50-foot that has fewer plantings. Our ordinance allows you to trade out if you have existing trees, but it doesn't really talk about if you want to completely change the types of plantings to something else, then this board's the appropriate place for that request. So the request is a little interesting in that he's actually asking to have more intense plantings, but he's not following exactly what our ordinance would say you should do for a 15-foot wide buffer yard, which normally would require a solid privacy fence. And instead he's wanting to do solid evergreens, and not have shrubs mixed in with them. So he notes that he will be exceeding the normal planting requirement by more than 100 trees, but he thinks that his proposal will look more uniform with the neighborhood rather than having a combination of a fence and varied plantings on the outside of it. There on the second page, you've got that same picture of the site, but then Kat has inserted the buffer yard diagram showing the 15-foot wide one that he would like to install. And so the evergreens would stay. He would just add more evergreens above and beyond that. And it would be those 2 shrubs for every 100 linear foot and the fence that would go to the inside side of those that he's asking to eliminate in exchange for those additional plantings. On the third page, there's a picture there of his site plan. And you can see I don't want to say excessive because I think it's exactly what he wants to do, but he's really putting in a lot of evergreens, so staff really doesn't have some concern that the point of the 15-foot wide buffer yard is that you're pretty much providing continuous screening. So staff kind of feels like he's trading out the fence for a different form of continuous screening, which may take a moment to grow up, but I think it may well be more attractive and easier to maintain. And probably more expensive than what the fence would be as well by the time he has that 4-foot tall planting height when he puts them in. So in order to approve a variance request, the Board of Zoning Appeals needs to look at the 3 findings in 203.12A regarding variances. First, that the approval will not be injurious to public health, safety, morals, and general welfare of the community. So the petitioner in this case is not asking to eliminate the screening or the plantings. He's just asking for an exchange for something that's higher density and a little bit different mix. He's going to space the evergreens apart far enough that when they reach full maturity, they'll be a natural full screening. The contractor's business will operate Monday through Friday. It's not allowed to have outdoor storage that's not screened, so there's a pretty minimal need for additional screening. He's just choosing to go with something more intense. So granting the variance would not appear to create an injurious situation to health, safety, or morals. 2, the use and value of the area adjacent to the property included in the variance will not be affected in a substantially adverse manner. Staff feels that a partial variance swapping out a fence and shrubs for more evergreens would still meet the spirit of the required buffer for the proposed use. And since many of the other uses nearby are either houses or in the case of the other home occupations, they have, cabinet business, which is legal nonconforming and thus doesn't have a buffer. And then the greenhouse, it sits further back. So most owners have picked that larger green space. So he's actually going to be more intense than what's around him. In terms of screening. And 3, the strict application of the terms of the zoning ordinance will result in practical difficulties. So there's not a direct traditional practical difficulty as long as he can remain within the 15-foot width. He does have a practical difficulty in trying to go wider because of the location of his septic and building and where they need to fit. He doesn't have enough room for that 50-foot green space that most people pick, so they don't have to plant as much. But I would note that petitioner is making more of an aesthetic and maintenance preference and asking to put more plantings in than what the ordinance would require, not less. A 6-foot tall fence on 4 sides of this property would not look very agricultural and might be difficult to maintain over time versus a solid barrier of trees. So he's not really asking to be less. And staff would recommend to approve the variance consequently by the petitioner to not put in the fence or shrubs, but instead, and it's important we add that clause, be required to have all evergreens as proposed by the petitioner. Well, he might have every intention and put them in, these approvals run with the land once installed, so we would want to make sure that the condition does actually state he has to plate those evergreens, so if someday he doesn't own that, any new owner would have to continue to maintain that.
Okay. Does the petitioner have anything to add, different or anything? Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience who'd like to add anything? Okay. Board discussion, anything?
It's nice to have somebody that wants to do more.
I was gonna say, he's doing quite a bit more and more expensive, I know, so I have no problem with it. I mean,
Yep.
I know it's a lot more expensive, so,
All right, you ready?
yep.
It's probably also more effective screening too.
Oh, yeah.
I would say, it's gonna be
At
taller.
least it will be.
Yeah.
Once
Yep.
it grows.
Yep.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to approve application number CC-2025-00570, docket number 18-25-VA, according to the findings of the staff report, which are incorporated in the motion by reference. And then, I guess these, does that take care of the conditions, or we need to,
Did you say findings and conditions in that motion?
I'll say it.
So all you have to do is say the
Yep.
conditions in the staff
Noted.
report as well.
With the conditions in the staff report.
I'll second. Roll call vote when you get a chance, please.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hessensberger,
Yes.
Chester Bennett.
Yes.
Great, 4-0. So your next step is gonna be to work with Kat to start on that minor subdivision process. And then we love participation, but if you guys have other things to do, there's no need to hang out with us beyond whatever you're here for. I know I'm hungry, so others may feel the same way. So we just always let people know we're not offended if you slip out when whatever you came for is done. Not a
Thank you.
big.
We appreciate it.
All right, we'll move on to our next hearing, which is application number CC-2025-00561, docket number 17-25-SE. Can you please take us through that staff report, please?
I can. So this is the application of Paul Edwards. This is going to look familiar to you because this did go through our boards, BZA and APC, for a 3-lot minor subdivision here in the relatively recent past. This is the northernmost lot of that subdivision, and the request is a special exception for an accessory apartment and an accessory structure. This property and almost everything around it are zoned agricultural. It looks like there's a little bit of R2 there to the east, snuck in. So the site consists of a 13.5 acre lot on the west side of 700 West between State Road 38 and 500 North in Section 16 of Madison Township. The site is Lot 1 in the Edwards Acres 3-lot minor subdivision. The petitioner is planning to build a new dwelling on Lot 1 for himself and his family, but he would also like to place an accessory apartment and an accessory structure. There is floodplain that runs across the lot, and he would like to put the apartment in the southeast corner of the lot, up next to the road. The house would be in the catty corner area, kind of as far as possible to the back, is kind of how it's proposed right now. Looking at elevations, there are some challenges here. BFE is 784, and the elevation at the location being proposed is 785, which means there's very little depth for a gravity flow septic, which cannot go in the system in the floodplain at all. There is a possibility if the location's too challenging, though, I would note that there are other locations on this lot where the petitioner might be able to place his accessory apartment, should there be challenges in this one. So I'm going to kind of update this as we go. Initially, when we wrote this, there was no soil testing done. That kind of got done and through. Kat did find some min specs on her desk when she got back from grabbing something to eat this evening before the meeting. But I will note, staff has had no opportunity to review these, and looking at them at a glance, sometimes we run into the challenges where the health department, because we do floodplain administration, and they don't always have access to those maps. The depth that these state is going to put this septic in the floodplain, and I just got it when I walked into the meeting today, so I haven't had an opportunity to call the state health, or DNR or the health department about these min specs. But it looks to me at a glance like this isn't going to work if it's placed in this location based on the elevations I have. but I don't have enough information getting here at the meeting to say that for sure one way or the other. So I would just note that I've got to follow up on this to see what was submitted to the health department and then see how that coordinates with the elevations and the floodplain to see whether or not this works, because you have to judge by the bottoms of the trenches, not by what grade is for a septic. And there's less than 12 inches between where the house site goes. So if the house is going at the highest spot and it's a gravity flow system, and then we're 10 inches down, and then we have another 2 inches of fall, and the perimeter drain, we're probably more than 12 inches, between. So I need to look at that and see if it works or not. Just being transparent, but I did want to make sure you guys knew we did receive something today, just not enough time to actually look at the floodplain. So, as of, oh, nope, I already updated that, we'll skip that. We've also talked to the surveyor, and Dan Sheets did note that this is going to require drainage board approval. The apartment was not included in the conversation when the subdivision went through, and it's down up against the legal drain in an area that initially they'd wanted a 4-lot minor subdivision with a building lot in this location, and that wasn't going to work because of septic limitations, and it wasn't really discussed at drainage board, so that needs to go back. So there is a map on the second page that talks about, you can kind of see where the proposed locations are for the primary dwelling and the accessory apartment. There's a picture looking at across. I'm going to come back to this at the end, but this is a little bit of an odd lot because you've kind of got a vegetative barrier. Accessory apartments are supposed to kind of be grouped with primary structures so that the fact that the landowner lives there helps guard what may or may not happen in the accessory unit. So it's a little bit of an atypical plan in terms of how that's being arranged or proposed. I will also note, and this is funny because we didn't have standards met, we didn't fully flush out our staff report, but this was initially kind of proposed as sharing a driveway, and then I think when the petitioner talked to Kat, he was maybe thinking about separate driveways. But if this can get its other stuff figured out, staff would recommend that a condition be required that these do share a driveway. These are not supposed to be two separate units, both of which are larger than the average Clinton County house. Jay and I actually discussed maybe some ordinance changes to make it clear that, well, we might deal with this one through conditions. The intent of an accessory apartment is not a whole nother 4 or 5 bedroom, massive dwelling unit. It's supposed to be 1,000 to 1,500 square foot next to or behind the primary unit that is kind of invisible to people going by. However, as our standards are currently written, we need to talk about that in special exceptions are uses that may or may not be appropriate in a given location, depending on how they're proposed. Not so much in does it violate the standards as they're currently written. But the reason I mention that is because the staff report ends with recommending continuing. I don't want to put the petitioner through going with an assignment of 2 or 3 things, and then he comes back next month and we add 3 or 4 more things. So if the board is feeling like, regardless of how this is cited, a shared driveway should be a condition, then he will need to talk to DNR about floodway permits and to the surveyor about a bridge to go over that open ditch. And he should be doing that and bringing it back to the BZA as well. So I only mention that because if the BZA kind of feels like that driveway issue is something that should be a condition if this can meet its other standards, we should probably give him some direction that's not currently in the staff report to get that done and bring it back so we don't put him through 3 meetings and bring that up in the 9th hour, which would be kind of inconsiderate. So anyway, going through the findings, the first is that the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. So there can be a maximum of 1, back up. There are 8 supplemental development standards in the ordinance for accessory apartments, so I'm going to go through those. First, there can be a maximum of 1 accessory apartment on a parcel, so this standard would appear to be met. There's currently no residential structures, so permitting would be required. I will note that the first residential structure will have to be built and occupied by the petitioner before they'll be able to get a permit for the second one, because accessory apartments are dependent on the petitioner living on the site. So they're going to have to build one first and then come back to the other. But these approvals run with the land, so it's, unless the board chooses to do otherwise, it wouldn't typically expire on them. They'll have time. 2, the accessory apartment must be clearly secondary and incidental to the principal dwelling unit. And exterior modification to any existing structure, has to be compatible. So in this case, the new house is proposed to be a 4,150 square foot home. The accessory apartment, which will sit up by the road significantly in front of the new house as proposed, would be 2,000 square foot. And of course, this gets further reviewed in the permitting process, and this is where, Jay and I actually had a conversation about the fact that accessory apartment regulation is supposed to kind of allow you some flexibility in a small rental unit or something for in-laws or children. It's not supposed to really be a whole nother full-fledged, very large home that has a separate drive. They always have to share an address, which is another reason not to have separate driveways, because 911 needs to come in and out at one location. They're supposed to be close to the primary structure so that things happening in the second unit affect the homeowner. And in theory being, and what's generally held true over my 17 years, is they deal with those problems long before neighbors complain. Not a large house that sits closer to the neighboring house than it does the house it's accessory to. So that's kind of that component where Jay actually, and I tend to agree, said we probably are going to put on a list of ordinance amendments to put an upper level cap on those. To make it clear, it's not typically an issue. I can only think of one other case where we had a large accessory apartment go in my 17 years. And it was a family where you had 3 and 4 generations, and they built them right next to each other, way back down a long lane. It was clearly, it was a different situation where it looked accessory. But that's the only case I can think of where we had something larger, and there were reasons you had like 10 people living there. That it made sense. So there's kind of that general thought that if we get through the devil in the details on drainage and septic, that staff does intend to recommend some conditions when we revise the staff report to that regard, and looking at the spirit of the ordinance and what may be appropriate as a special exception, even if we're within the letter, because the situation doesn't feel like what the spirit of the ordinance is aiming at for an accessory apartment. Third, the accessory apartment can be in a detached structure or attached. In this case, it's detached. No issue there. 4, the owner of the apartment must reside in either the dwelling unit or the accessory apartment. So the owners currently reside in Lafayette. They will have to move to the site before they can get the permits for the second unit, and then they'll have to just remain there. 5, there may be no exterior stairways to an upper level. That's not applicable in this case. 6, if it's in interior, then it has to have interior access. It's not applicable in this case. This is an accessory structure. 7, that all applicable building code and health department standards have to be met. So this gets handled during the construction process. And again, we kind of noted the health department concerns here, which again, we do have min specs now, but I do have concerns that this may not, these min specs may be incompatible with the floodplain elevations. We need to review that and communicate with the applicant before the next meeting, so if that needs to be revised, he can take care of it. It may be possible to do a mound system here, even if this doesn't work. So I'm not saying it's out of options, it's just this one may not work the way it's written. And then finally, additional parking has to be provided off-street. No concerns at all here. You've got 13 acres for 4 parking spots. The problem's not space. So that kind of sums up the standards. The second finding is the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious. So again, the primary concerns here are going to be your drainage and your septic in terms of things that might be an issue. And we just kind of note if it can't obtain these approvals, then there could be an issue in terms of we don't want untreated sewage or sewage that's getting into water when it's at flood stage. And we don't want to create water issues. So there's still kind of an open-ended on that one that we would expect to get resolved as it goes through those other approvals. And then third finding is the proposed use shall be sited oriented in landscapes. The relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties does not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So again, this kind of comes around typically with houses much to that septic and drainage standpoint, so you're kind of coming back to the same thing. I would also note, well, perhaps not a direct harm. You do get into this question with the intent of accessory apartments, that the accessory unit, and this would relate to commitments, not necessarily to recommending approval or not once this is wound up, but accessory units really are supposed to be close to what they're accessory to, not closest to other homes and places, put as far apart as possible with barriers and buffering in between them. like they're two separate properties. So if we can get past the septic and the drainage concerns, the staff report is probably going to incorporate some of that conversation in its final form, which I don't want to surprise either the board or the applicant with in a month, as we have those conversations. So for the proposed use of provide a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the neighborhood. There's really no concern here. In terms of density, there's plenty of room for an accessory apartment as long as we can just work out, some of the devil in the details. 5, vehicular traffic and parking needs to be organized to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. Similar to the finding and the standards for apartments, no concerns there. 13 acres, 4 parking spaces, plenty of room. And finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance to be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So the 2012 comprehensive plan land use goal 2 does say to promote the development of residential areas with high quality housing in a variety of types, styles, and densities. So this site is in Madison Township. It's 1.5 miles from the town of Mulberry. There's several areas that are rural residential nearby. It's already been approved for a dwelling as well as 2 other neighboring dwellings approved. So as long as we can work out the details, there wouldn't appear to be any inconsistency with the comprehensive plan. Jay did have a concern, as we talked about this after the staff report was written, that ties into some of the earlier conversation. This should not end up looking like it didn't get 4 lots and then we stuck a house where the 4th lot was going to be that's a full-fledged house. The point is that there should be a development to the north, or if he really wants a 4th home site, that maybe he needs to go back through the subdivision process and revise the plat before he sells those other lots off and loses his ability to get signatures. That it's not like some sort of back door to put a 4th full-fledged house in. So there's kind of a concern there in terms of appropriateness of the way in which the application is presented, not necessarily with the idea of having an accessory apartment appropriately designed with a primary unit that's the way we typically approve these. As it stands now, though, staff would consequently recommend to continue the special exception request and allow the petitioner more time to obtain septic and drainage approval. And if the board shares staff's concern about the driveway, recommend they're also instructed to talk with DNR and the county surveyor about the crossing on that creek, or
In the
perhaps
location.
I would say, or perhaps reconsider if that location should be moved back. Other possibilities, frankly, would be to require the primary structure to be moved forward. But your primary structure should really be in line with or in front of your accessory apartment, not the other way around. So, my hope would be the petitioner kind of listens to some of this and maybe gives some consideration to his layout.
Didn't we address the drive in the last go around?
We have, on the subdivision phase, no, it was 3 lots, 3 houses, an accessory apartment wasn't discussed at the subdivision hearing. So, however, the covenants do not ban one from being in the subdivision, so they don't have a conflict with the covenants. So anyway, we would recommend continuing. While we don't have the needed approvals to recommend approval confidently, we also are not confident that they can't be obtained by some combination of reorganizing the site and getting more information through the different bodies that need to give those approvals. So it makes sense to give the applicant some time to finish it up and kind of maybe come back with this more fine-tuned. And knowing that once we have this other stuff, staff is probably going to add some additional conditions to try to address some of the challenges that we see in the way this is currently designed if the applicant doesn't voluntarily address some of those themselves. The other option would be for the board to choose to deny instead of continue, but then that requires them to wait 90 days to reapply, and if all we have is some missing information, that may not be the most efficient way of dealing with it. So that sums up the staff report as we stand now. We haven't gotten any feedback from neighbors on this one in terms of written letters or anything, so
Okay.
that's all there is.
Okay, well, thank you. Does petitioner have anything to add?
I do.
Say, if you wouldn't mind going to the mic, sir. Please just state your name and who you're here with, kind of representing.
My name is Paul Edwards. I am the owner of the property. The size of the property, when this originally began, was just for my house. This idea has been approached to me by my wife in the last few months, so that's why it's so raw and a number of 2,000 square foot. I just told her, go half the size of the house. I don't know how big this thing's gonna be. It's gonna be a house that's planned for my mother at 78 years old. She's elderly. 2,000 is probably too large. I think 1,000 could be too large. I don't know. but I'm trying to get her here. And she has got a temper that I don't want her in my house. And if we're talking about connecting it and putting it next to me, I'll move out. So this is, as far as the bridge goes, I've talked to my wife about doing one driveway, but then I was told I cannot cross that stream. So I backed off of it. Then I am aware of the challenge this is going to meet is the drain. We have every intention of building our house, so this is probably actually a few years off of even breaking ground. I think that it's going to be very costly to build this up. So nothing is going to surprise me with this, and I've told my wife this. So I've told everybody it's in the family this. But that's the intention, is it's going to be, when she passes, it will be left for her family to stay. It will not be a rental. That's really all I have.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to add anything or any questions? Okay.
I think as staff hearing that, like, assuming that the board cares on the driveway, my recommendation, that would be either needs to ignore the expense of it and figure out with DNR and the county surveyor what is required to get, because there are ways to put bridges over waterways, they're not cheap, but you just have to have state permitting and everything else,
Yeah.
and there's rules about how you have to do it. Or he should consider moving that to the other side of the ditch and getting a different set of soil tests, which may actually also help his septic if he has to go to a mound system, which I suspect he will. Is going to be a lot more expensive on that side, whereas he has much higher elevations when he gets on the other side and he's not limited. Not saying it needs to be 2 foot from his back door, but
Yeah.
it needs to either share, it needs to share a drive. So whether that's on the other side of the creek or the same side, you know, my advice would be, it's the board's call ultimately, but my advice would be that he needs to look at a situation that makes it accessory, and then if he doesn't intend to build 2,000 square foot, maybe modify his request a little bit to fall more in line with the intent of the ordinance.
You know, one of the things, traditionally, we have looked at size to determine what is secondary and what is primary. But I think that in determining what the ordinance means, you can consider also location. In other words, I'm not sure that, and if you have two properties that are divided by a tree line and a ditch, I'm not sure one is secondary to the other because they're divided. And I'm not sure under our ordinance, let me put it this way. I think this board could construe the ordinance to mean secondary means not only size, but also in appearance, in location, layout.
And then my concern is if we have two driveways, an accessory apartment has to share an address. 911 addresses, every 5.28 feet is a new number. They're mathematically calculated, it's a grid. So now one of those houses, if there's a heart attack or something happens, is not gonna get an immediate ambulance response because they're required to share an address. So how do we pick which one
How
that
do you know
deserves
which
to
one
get,
to
like,
go to?
I have a
Yeah.
safety concern there if we create a situation where they're
Well, that's
not-
also just another
aligned,
reason why they
yes.
shouldn't be that far apart.
you know, you want an ambulance to get to either one of them within the same address and the same drive, should there, heaven forbid, be a life-threatening emergency where minutes count, which anything heart or stroke related, seems like a minute isn't that long, but it really is when you're dealing with certain types of medical emergencies. That can be a life or death difference.
And one more thing I forgot to add.
Would you mind going to the mic, sir? I
This
know.
is real quick.
No, I know. Thank you.
So she brought up the fact that before we sell the other lots, so we are closing in on the deadline of the middle lot. It's been sold. The first lot has just gone under contract today. So there's going to be other owners there, and it's going to be here. Next few weeks will be, well, next few days actually, for the middle lot, and then I think 45 days for the first lot.
All the more reason to examine this as truly be an accessory unit.
Yeah.
Not some sort of, because it is gonna be harder. He can still replat, but
Yeah.
everybody else is gonna have to agree with him. He can't unilaterally
Well, and especially if they've already,
agree to purchase.
exactly.
Yep, they have a say in that room.
Yep. No, one of the biggest things was the driveway that got me thinking. I mean, I didn't even think of the 911 thing. So I think that's one thing definitely that we need to make sure we get right. And Guess I'll open it up for board discussion too. Do you guys have anything to add or any questions?
Well, you know, when you look at the property and how it's put together right now, my first impression was it doesn't seem to meet the spirit of what we're considering with the accessory structures. I think there are some valid points to consider, and that would be the one with the driveway. You know, you're always looking, although it might seem minor, you're always looking for emergency things to happen immediately and without fail. So I think it's a valid concern. Sewer sounds like it's going to be much more expensive, probably, although we don't know all the details. If you
I don't want to speak too assertively on that until I have a chance to look at it, because those elevation numbers can be
Yeah.
sensitive.
If it is requiring a mound system, I know that drives up the expense with the lift station and all the extra construction that has to happen for a mound system.
If you have a mound and a bridge, you've added a lot of cost.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And so if the driveway is a valid concern and then that drives the cost for a bridge, that also means some other things too. So I'd rather, if I was the owner, I'd rather get the bad message first and deal with the situation in every manner that I could, other than trying to squeeze in something that the board potentially is going to say, you know, it doesn't look like it meets the spirit. We're not going to give it all that we, full-hearted, yep, we like it, you know. It doesn't seem to meet the spirit. And it would probably look out of place compared to all the rest of the structures that are going to go in that vicinity. So I'd rather just be honest and upfront than,
I appreciate that.
yeah.
This is why I kind of brought up the extra, because I didn't want to continue you, and then you get all this, and you know, this way you have time to think through it and maybe revise something.
I told my wife you're fighting out of a hole, and that how deep it is, that's what we're trying to find out, is how deep it is.
Yeah.
Did I hear you correctly when, did I hear 2 to 3 years before you would potentially break ground?
Well, I thought I was gonna break ground a year ago. So we went through all these steps, and I'm going, no, just give me 2 years. So it could be, hopefully this fall, is what I'm thinking.
I certainly appreciate, you know, what you're trying to do with your family and how you're even considering the future. But there's others in
I
this area.
understand.
Yeah, okay.
And when we build things like this, it will probably last, you would think, 75 to 100 years. You know, and so, and if you've got two things that don't look like they fit together, somebody's going to want to split them someday.
Right.
And then you deal with it on the enforcement side, because something got wonky.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, is the best to continue?
Staff would advise continuing, because at least from a staff perspective, we don't find that the idea of an accessory apartment on Mr. Edwards' lot is a problem with the findings. It's more that we're missing some approvals and details, and we are, perhaps we need to rethink the site plan a bit. But the use itself as a concept, you know, staff doesn't see that he has insurmountable problems, just maybe the way he's initially laid it out
Right.
has some issues. So I feel like, you know, if we deny it, then he's got to wait 90 days before he can come back. Whereas if, you know, and then it'll have to be re-advertised, you know, we don't have a fleet of objectors that are concerned, you know, coming forward. So staff doesn't see an issue with continuing. Now, I would say in that same caveat, if we come back in 30 days and we still don't know enough to consider it, then it may be appropriate to deny and just say, you know what, when you figure out what's happening, maybe come back. But
So-
I don't see any harm in giving him some time to try to get through drainage board and let us look at the septic, consider whether he wants to move that or rearrange it and change some things around to make it fit the spirit of the ordinance a little better and come back with a more fleshed out plan.
So continuation would afford the owner the most flexibility in this
It
situation?
would, without requiring additional expense in the hearing process.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Okay, so, how about if I make a recommendation in here? I'd like to make a motion for application number CC-2025-00561, docket 17-25-SE would be continued.
I'll second.
And I would encourage you to state as part of that motion what you would like him to
Okay.
make sure he brings back, so that it's clear in the minutes, so that if subsequently we get to the next hearing and things are missing, there's a written record of, and he has it too.
So I think it's fair to say that the drive is one of the things that we'd like to see addressed, especially considering what the 911 requirements are or protocol is. The sewer needs to be fully addressed in one way or the other. I mean, it sounds like there's a way forward. It's just going to be really expensive.
Or maybe need to shift location.
Yeah, or.
If he
yeah.
goes to the other side, he has higher ground, so a
Right.
design like this might work fine.
Right, if you go to a different location, it's probably gonna put all these other desires that we're looking at.
And it moves
out of the
behind,
picture.
the location
Right.
issue goes away if it's
Right.
behind your house. I don't, doesn't have to be behind, but set back from it.
And-
Yeah, so the primary house is closer than the accessory is, or
Yeah.
at least equal, side by side.
And you might find some nice landscaping to help separate your mother.
And that's probably cheaper than the bridge.
It would be cheaper than a bridge.
And then drainage, I think, is on that list too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe you just should in general say, siting and design considerations, or I think we've kind of fleshed out details for him to think about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you wanna, put it into the realm of, look at siting and design considerations, that's fine with me. I'd be glad to put that in there. So continuation with the, emphasis on siting and design of location.
So we got a motion.
I seconded it.
Oh, we got a second as well.
Roll call vote, please, when you get a chance.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Stacy Pedigo,
Yes.
Scott Hutzensberger,
Yes.
Chester Banks.
Yes.
All right, so your 4-0 continued. This week I'll get a chance to look at that septic design and talk with the health department, the floodplain component, so we can get back to you on that. And then, you definitely need to get a hold of Drainage Board, but I would also note, if from this conversation, you're gonna rearrange some things, figure out what you're rearranging first, because I know with drainage, as well as to some extent with septic, depending on what you do, how big it is, how it arranges where it sits, may change the conversation, so we don't wanna put you through the process 4 times, so.
And I wanna point out also that the first min specs that you sent me on that, the first time before this one, those were for the house.
Yes.
These that you had done were in that corner. So if you end up moving this to another location, you're gonna have to get.
You'll need to get different
Oh, I
soil
got it.
tests, yeah. Yep.
Or new soil testing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll move on to our next hearing, which is application number CC-2025-00579, docket number 19-25-SE. Can you please take us through that staff report?
Can, this is the petition of Janet, I don't wanna mangle this, Bumal? I'm sorry? Bimel, perfect. Thank you so much, and I apologize. This is a request for a special exception for a single residence in the A1 district, so this is gonna look a little more familiar compared to some of the variety we've had tonight on other topics. This is a parcel that's zoned agriculturally, as is everything immediately around it. The site will consist of an approximately 11-acre lot on the east side of North 900 West, between 550 North and 700 North in Section 8 of Madison Township. It would be a first split off a 38.48 acre parent tract. It's in exact common ownership with an existing dwelling lot to the south of it that the petitioner resides in right now, along with some farmland further to the south past the dwelling lot, and woodland with floodplain in it that's to the east. The petitioner's hoping to downsize the acreage she's currently owning and maintaining. So she's splitting off about 8 acres to the south of her dwelling that's going to an adjacent property owner for extra yards, so that's subdivision exempt, it's just a boundary line adjustment. And the woodland is going to a different purchaser for recreational purposes, and again, as long as they're not constructing anything, that doesn't require any hearings or subdivision. So that leaves her with about 11 acres, which is the petition site, 8 that it's her current dwelling lot. So she'd like to make an additional building lot on the petition site, which requires a special exception approval from the BZA, and then if she receives that, she's gonna move through to do a 2-lot minor subdivision approval, one for the new house and then one for the existing dwelling, because after all of this is split off, she no longer has her required minimum 20 acres. And since it's a 2009 build, it was built because it had 20 acres or more on it, so now that that change is occurring, she has to go through that ordinance. So it'll no longer be subdivision exempt. This is, to the south, there's 4 platted lots that have been rezoned to rural residential. And so those are a little bit larger, so this is kind of consistent in terms of a little bit larger homesteads, so to speak. We did look at this under the point system, but it was only able to score 6 points. It lost 2 because of the proposed lot size, and then it lost an additional 2 because, well, this is more than the required quarter mile. It is less than a half mile from a confined feeding operation. So we don't anticipate there's going to be any variance needed, but we do start to discourage homes with some loss of points in terms of administrative approvals as we get closer to CAFOs. In this case, though, because of the other homes that are in the vicinity, this site isn't really creating an expansion problem for that CAFO. On the second page, you'll see Kat's done an awesome map, kind of color-coded, showing you which property is going to go in which direction on this lot. And then that second picture, she's gone ahead and done a quarter-mile radius around the proposed new home lot. And then she's pointed out with a yellow arrow where that confined feeding is. And the confined feeding is on the opposite side from where the larger residentially zoned subdivision is to the south. So the reality is an extra lot here is not going to be the point of conversation for any expansion for that confined feeding. There's houses that are closer to it. And there's a picture there on the third page that just shows you kind of this general area as it sits now. So there's 4 criteria in section 51303 that the board needs to find affirmatively are met. First, the lot shall be located such that the proximity to other dwellings, the configuration of the parent tract, the location of creeks, ditches, and natural features have the least negative impact on the use of agricultural equipment or the use of the property as part of a farm. So it does appear that this is right now mostly used for hay with a very small portion in cropland. There looks like there's a lot of maneuvering happening right now around an existing barn on the proposed lot and then woodland to the rear. There's contiguous farming with the remaining parent tract, but you have an existing dwelling in between, so there's not a good way to get around that. So all that to say, this is already really chopped up in terms of getting conventional farming equipment that's using GIS technology to farm in here and out of here efficiently. There seem to be challenges. 2, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not require changes in road surfaces or bridges. So this is off a gravel road that serves farm equipment and several houses. It doesn't appear that one more home on a large lot would have a substantial effect on traffic flow or volume. 3, locating a dwelling on the new lot would not interfere with current agricultural practices in the adjacent area, nor substantially restrict the expansion of confined feedings. So as previously mentioned, there are other homes that are between this and the confined feeding to the southeast. So this home, if approved, would not further restrict any expansions that might be proposed in that location, nor would it appear to interfere with other current agricultural practices adjacent. 4, there are mitigating circumstances in the application of the above rating criteria. So the primary mitigating circumstance would appear to be that this is being utilized for hay, likely because of the maneuvering challenges for conventional beans and corn. There's tree lines within it that keep it from being used as contiguous agricultural cropland. It's also too close to the existing neighboring dwellings to place a new confined feeding or a grain handling operation on this property. And then there is some existing yard and smaller structures, including a barn, that are already on this proposed parcel. So it's not 100% pasture even. In addition to those standards, we have 6 special exception findings we look at with every special exception. First, the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. So if a special exception is granted, then a single-family home would be permitted on the property pending minor subdivision approval from the Area Plan Commission. 2, the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other property or persons and shall comply with the performance standards herein. So there is a soil request on file. This lot is suitable for septic. It will require a perimeter drain, which shouldn't be an issue. And it will require minor subdivision approval where they can locate that outlet, but the petitioner does own land with a creek to the back, so as long as she makes sure she gets all the necessary easements before she sells her land off, she shouldn't have any issue getting outlets. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties do not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values of adjacent properties. So again, there's some farm ground nearby, as well as some other dwelling sites that are kind of on medium, 2 to 4 acre lots. There is some separation between them. If a new dwelling is placed here, along with the 11 acres, there's still room for actually some livestock to even be on this lot, rural type of mini farm, so to speak, could sit here. As long as they strategically place it to meet the reciprocal setbacks from neighboring homes. There doesn't seem to be anything here that would be created out of character with what's already there. Or the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the environment in the neighborhood. Again, this is kind of consistent with larger acreage homes nearby. Don't really see an issue here. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. We only need 2 parking spaces, plenty of room. This finding would be met. And finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the comprehensive plan and be consistent with the objectives and policies therein. So we do have a policy that says to minimize development on agricultural land. However, the Madison Township Future Land Use Plan in the 2012 Comprehensive Plan does note that this township has more varied topography than other Clinton County townships and has several areas designated for rural residential development, including one very close to this proposed site.
Adjacent.
Yes, and that the point system should continue to be used as a tool to help, balance that pressure between development and agricultural areas. Given that this site is less than 1/10 of a mile from a residentially zoned area, and there appear to be challenges with traditional cropland farming. There's already buildings and some maintained yard areas on the proposed new home site, and the other agricultural uses that have reciprocal setbacks would face challenges attempting to site here. This request does appear to meet the objectives and goals. Consequently, staff would recommend approving the request for a single home, noting that minor subdivision approval for that 2-lot minor will be necessary from the Plan Commission if approved.
Okay. Do you have anything to add, ma'am?
No, sir, I do not.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that'd like to add anything?
I just have a question.
Would you mind stating your name, please? Thank you.
Aaron Ramsey, so I am the property that butts up against it. So my only question was, it sounds like it's just gonna be a single home and not
It is.
a housing addition. So that's
Correct.
my only concern.
If somebody bought that and changed that, they would have to come back
Okay.
to these boards.
Yeah,
and
that's
you
the
would
only
get
thing.
new notice, so it
Yep.
wouldn't.
I
Yeah,
just wanted to verify, that's
Yep.
all.
wise.
And it's north, right? It's north of her house?
Yes, north of her house. Yep, sorry, I had to,
Sorry.
too many maps
Yeah, I
tonight.
I think it's pretty straightforward.
I think it's real
I don't know.
straightforward. Yep.
So,
Okay, you ready?
yes, whenever you are.
I got to go back to the first sheet here. Okay, this one here is pretty easy. I'd like to make a motion to approve application number CC 2025-00579, docket 19-25-SE, according to the findings of staff report, which are incorporated in the motion by reference.
I'll second. Roll call vote when you get a chance, please.
Grant Muller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigo,
Yes.
Scott Hestensberger,
Yes.
Chester Banks.
Yes.
Okay, 4-0, so you can move on to the subdivision stage. If you have questions, you can reach out to, I think Kat's been helping you for guidance on that.
You've been working on 40 in parallel, correct?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, they'll know what to do.
They'll know.
All right, we will move on to our last hearing of the night, which is application number CC-2025-00595, docket number 20-25-SE. Can you please take us through that staff report?
I can. This is the application of John Hendrickson. The request is for a special exception approval to operate a veterinary hospital and clinic. The property in question is zoned agriculturally, as is everything around it. This particular site is a 5-acre site. It's on the east side of State Road 39 in Ross Township. It's surrounded by farmland with a residence to the north, the west, and the south. Each is less than a quarter mile away. There is an existing commercial structure on this petition site. According to tax records, it was built in '97. Until recently, it was a farm implement dealership, and it has closed its business operations more recently. The petitioner would like to reuse it to move his existing veterinary clinic, which is now inside the town of Rossville, to the site. But in order to have a clinic in the A1 district, he needs a special exception approval. If approved, the new use and existing structure will have to go through the State Department of Homeland Security for a state design release as to meet local building codes, as well as having to work with the health department for the continued use on the existing septic that was new in '97. On the second page, you kind of got a map there. You can see where this sits. I think most of us are familiar with this site. Can we? Yeah, awesome. And there's a picture there. You can see this is kind of an ag-looking structure. Little bit of variance in that barn, but they're off 39, well-traveled area. So there's again our special exception standards that we need to look at for any kind of special exception approval. First, that the proposed use conforms to the district provisions in which it will be located and the general regulations of the ordinance. So there are 3 supplemental standards that are kind of listed under section 533 of the zoning ordinance pertaining to veterinary hospitals and clinics. One of the 3 only pertains to Class C kennels, so we haven't listed it specifically. But the other 2 are that the facility shall be approved by the Clinton County Health Department and the Animal Control Officer, and then that veterinary hospitals and clinics must be soundproofed. Staff did reach out to both the Health Department and the Animal Control Officer, but has not, as of yet, received a response, which...
The health department
Oh.
did get back after that.
Did they have any issue?
He said that he, not for that
Okay.
particular use, he was not gonna have any.
Okay, so we've heard from the health department. Now what...
There was an email in there.
Okay, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. Oh yeah, I see it. Perfect. Okay. And now that I see it, I remember you handing it to me. So it's been crazy this week. So yeah, the health department does not have any concerns as far as further investigations there. And typically with these things, as we go through the permitting process, we reach out to these entities as well. Having worked with other veterinary hospitals and kennels, usually the concern centered around making sure that there's a humane environment, that things are sanitary, that there's food and water if there's going to be any kenneling facilities, you know, the same basics, honestly, that a veterinarian is typically also concerned about. So, and then secondly, for soundproofing, the petitioner is aware of the standard, will confirm it in their design during the permitting process to make sure they've got something that looks like it's going to meet that. And then again, when it's complete, before we issue the certificate of occupancy, we'll make sure that soundproofing's been installed. Second finding is that the proposed use shall not involve an element or cause a condition that may be dangerous, injurious, or noxious to other properties and persons, that shall comply with the performance standards herein. So we know just as long as any requirements from the health department, as long as state and local codes are met, the standard would appear to be met. 3, the proposed use shall be sited, oriented, and landscaped so the relationship of its buildings and grounds to adjacent buildings and properties does not impair health, safety, or comfort, nor adversely affect values. So this site has had a building here since '97. It meshes well with the area. And while not directly mentioned in the staff report, we've never received any complaints about the business operations on this site in my 17 years here. Since this is a change of use, the new use will have to meet modern standards, including things like landscaping and parking, but those can be handled through the permitting and plan review process before a certificate of occupancy is issued. Staff's understanding the petitioner is willing to work through those requirements. He just wants to confirm that his use is approved before he purchases the property. His purchase agreement is wisely contingent upon getting the necessary approval for him to reuse it for his intended purpose. 4, the proposed use shall produce a total environmental effect consistent with and not harmful to the neighborhood. So again, this has been here since '97 as a building. We've never received complaints. It has an agricultural facade. This is consistent with the area. With the change of use, he will have to put some buffer yard landscaping in, but we have no reason to believe that his use is going to be any less compatible than what the implement dealer was. Honestly, it'll probably be less intense. He's not going to have a bunch of farm implements parked in the yard, so. 5, the proposed use shall organize vehicular access and parking to minimize conflicting traffic movement on adjacent streets. So there does appear to be sufficient space here for off-street parking for patrons that are bringing their pets for appointments or picking up pets after receiving services. He's not needing to put in big equipment like combines for display, so we don't really have a concern about him getting parking in here. Finally, the proposed use shall promote the objectives of the ordinance and be consistent with the comprehensive plan. So community heritage and quality of life objective 1 of the comp plan states to enhance the appearance of major corridors that serve as gateways to Clinton County communities. Additionally, economic development goal 3, objective 4 states to establish agribusiness and agriculturally related commercial uses in appropriate locations. And goal 4, objective 3 says to encourage the adaptive reuse of existing structures. So the proposed business is a change of use from the previous one, and it will need to add some landscaping and make the frontage a little more attractive than what's been there previously when farm implements were being displayed along the front. But if the proposal can meet the standards of the zoning ordinance and all local building and health codes, it would seem very consistent with this finding in terms of improving the appearance of the site frontage, reusing the existing commercial structure that would otherwise remain vacant and potentially eventually become blighted, and having an agriculturally related use, a veterinarian, and what we haven't asked, he may only be small animal, in an appropriate location. Both small and large animals are on farms and around houses. And frankly, speaking as somebody with large animals, there have been times with the both small and large animal vets, there's sort of a crisis nationally in getting new vets to come up to take the place. And there have been times that we actually have to call a small animal vet because we can't find anybody else and we need whatever help or advice someone's willing to give us. So I would definitely consider a veterinarian to be an agriculturally related business. In summary, staff would recommend to approve the special exception in order for the petitioner to move his existing veterinary hospital and clinic to the petition site with the following conditions to be confirmed in the designs before permits are issued and then confirmed completed before a CO is issued. 1, that all local and state building codes are met. 2, the approval from the health department and animal control officer are obtained. 3, the structure must be soundproofed. And then 4, all the required landscaping and applicable ordinance requirements need to be installed or met, or it doesn't say it, they need to come back here for a variance if they run into a practical difficulty on something they aren't foreseeing at this point in time and happens to come up.
Okay, thank you. Does petitioner anything you'd like to add? Okay. No, I think it's great that they're gonna use that building and obviously kind of like Liz said, spice it up a little with landscaping and stuff, and I think it's awesome, so.
Make a nice hospital.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah. All right.
Easier to get to. And park at.
Anybody else? All right.
I do it. Are you here to comment on this?
I just want to say I support this 100%.
Okay.
I was the original owner of that land, and the implement agency ceased to exist, and they are going to put something there that is an asset to the Rossville community, so I am behind it 100%.
Just want to make sure we didn't skip you and move to it. For the
I
record,
didn't come to talk, but I support this 100%.
for anyone listening on YouTube, the person in the audience was not here as an objector. He supports this and supports the reuse of it, and I think that sums up what he said.
All right. You ready?
Yes, sir.
So, I'd like to make a motion to approve application number CC-2025-00595, according to the findings of the staff report, which are incorporated in motion by reference with the conditions referenced in the staff report.
I'll second. Roll call vote when you're done, please.
Graham Mueller,
Yes.
Stacy Pettigrew,
Yes.
Scott Hutzensberger,
Yes.
Chester Bankus,
Yes.
4-0. So your next step will be to start getting plans together and, set up. And if you've got questions, as far as requirements, reach out to us. I always tell people, if you start to get some preliminary stuff, even if it's sketched, we don't charge anything to take a quick look and let you know if it meets the ordinance or if something's missing before you get too married to something. So, you know, we can't bend rules, but we're here to try to help you understand and get through it. So, you know, you're good to move ahead. Your development plan review will be administrative. You won't have to come back to the board, so we'll just work through that process as long as you're able to meet the standards. And let us know when you need information. I'm sure Kat will help you get whatever you need.
All right, thank you, guys. Any new business?
I don't think so.
All right.
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, so our next meeting is August 26, 2025. I'm guessing in here, unless something comes up.
Right now, that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I haven't heard anything different
Okay.
yet. So I'll keep you guys informed on that. I do know already we have 2 people that have already filed.
Okay.
And we have a continued case from tonight.
And a continued case for tonight, and I've got 3 more possibilities laying on my desk. So, anyway.
Eat before you come. That's what Kat just said. And,
Basically,
You guys did a good job tonight, though. You did a lot of work. And
I just
got
started
it done
wishing
in-
I brought water, and that was all.
All right, well, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Stacy beat you, so you can have a second.
You're the second
I'll
then.
second.
Okay, meeting adjourned.
Did the meeting for tomorrow night get canceled?
It did.
I saw that.
When I first saw that one on the
What's that
accessory
one?
structure,
Did
it was like,
data center.
Oh, yeah.
Unfortunately, I think it's gonna